The void outside the viewport was not truly empty. To Lieutenant J. Kim, it was a living tapestry of data. The soft, constant glow of the bridge's holographic displays painted his serious face in shades of blue and amber. His fingers hovered over the smooth, cool surface of his command console, tracing the invisible lines that mattered most. The border. It was just a theoretical boundary, a line agreed upon by diplomats and admirals light years away. But here, on the patrol cruiser Dauntless, it was as real as the hull metal beneath his feet. "Lieutenant?" The voice was calm, but it carried a subtle edge. Ensign Una Park, his executive officer, stood beside the main sensor station. Her eyes were fixed on a scrolling feed of numbers and symbols. "I'm getting a mass shadow reading from the far side of the Cygnus DMZ. It's big. And it's getting bigger." Jay turned his chair towards her. "How big, Una?" "Multiple capital class signatures. At least 15, plus escorts. Their transponders are broadcasting Imperial codes." She looked up, meeting his gaze. Her expression was professionally neutral, but Jay had served with her long enough to see the flicker of tension in her dark eyes. "They are holding position. For now. But their orientation is aggressive. They're pointed right at us. The Galactic Empire." The name itself felt heavy, ancient, and cold. It was a polity that measured its history in millennia, its territory in tens of thousands of star systems. To them, humanity Terrans were newcomers, an upstart species who had claimed a little too much space, a little too quickly. The border here, the demilitarized zone of the Cygnus sector, was a relic of an old, tense negotiation. The Empire had wanted the resource-rich nebula and its habitable worlds. Terrans had said no. The DMZ was the compromise, a buffer of empty space neither would militarize. But the Empire's ships loved to dance along its edges. "Put them on the main viewer," Jay ordered. His voice even. The star field on the large screen at the front of the bridge shimmered and was replaced by a tactical overlay. A cluster of red icons pulsed ominously on the far side of a thick golden line representing the DMZ. On this side, a single steady blue dot represented the Dauntless. The scale of the display made Jay's throat feel tight. His ship was a capable patrol vessel, but it was a watchdog, not a battlecruiser. The Imperial fleet out there was a war machine. "Standard hailing protocols," Jay said. "Audio only. Let's see if they feel like talking." Una nodded, her fingers dancing across her panel. A moment later, the bridge speakers crackled with a burst of static, then cleared to a deep, synthesized voice speaking in the Imperial trade tongue. "Unidentified Terran vessel. This is the Imperial battlecruiser Imperius. You are operating near restricted space. Adjust your course." Jay leaned towards his microphone. "Imperial battlecruiser Imperius. This is Lieutenant J. Kim of the Terran patrol cruiser Dauntless. We are well within Terran patrolled space, holding position on our side of the Cygnus DMZ as per the Treaty of Sirius. Your current fleet concentration is noted. Please be advised that any forward movement across the demarcation line will be considered a treaty violation." There was a long pause. Jay could almost feel the arrogance radiating across the void. The reply, when it came, was dismissive. "The Treaty of Sirius is a document of convenience, Lieutenant. Space belongs to those who can hold it. We are conducting routine military exercises. Do not interfere." On the tactical display, the cluster of red icons began to move. Not a sprint, but a slow, deliberate drift. A single ship, a dagger-shaped destroyer, edged forward, its icon touching the golden line. "They're testing us," Una said quietly, not needing the microphone. "Record and log the position." "Exactly," Jay instructed. He opened a separate encrypted channel. "Terran Command, This is Dauntless on Patrol Vector Gamma 7. We have an Imperial fleet, designation Imperious Lead, massing at the Cygnus DMZ. One vessel is making a borderline approach, requesting instructions and potential backup. The response from command was not instant, but when it came, it was crystal clear. The voice of the duty commander, a woman, was calm and iron-hard. Dauntless, command acknowledges. Hold your position. The border is absolute. You are authorized to issue a final warning if they cross, but do not, repeat, do not fire unless fired upon. Reinforcements are being scrambled, but you are the line for the next 40 minutes. Command out. 40 minutes. An eternity in a standoff. Jay took a slow breath. You heard command, everyone. Stations ready. Shields at standby. Do not power weapons. Let's show them we're watching, not threatening. The bridge crew, a mix of young officers like Yuna and a few older hands, moved with quiet efficiency. The atmosphere was thick with focus. Everyone knew what was at stake. Beyond this line of empty space lay the Jingsu Cluster 3 inhabited, Terran-aligned colonies and a half-dozen mining outposts. They were peaceful places. They had no fleet. On the screen, the Imperial destroyer's icon slid across the golden line. 1 kilometer 2-5. They've crossed, sir, Yuna reported. Her voice tight. J opened to hail again. Imperious, this is Dauntless. You have violated the Cygnus DMZ. You are now in Terran space. Heave to and reverse your course immediately. This is your only warning. This time, the response was almost immediate, and it was not the synthesized voice. A new speaker came online, his tone dripping with condescension. Little Terran ship, you are a piece of driftwood before a tidal wave. We will pass. You will move, or you will be moved. The choice is yours. The rest of the Imperial fleet began to move now, a wall of crimson light advancing on the tactical screen. They moved with a terrifying, synchronized grace, aimed directly at the Dauntless, and more importantly, directly at the colonies behind it. Che felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Every instinct, every fiber of his being, screamed to turn the ship, to run, to fight, to do something. But command's order echoed in his mind. Hold the line. The border is absolute. He looked at Yuna. She looked back, her face pale but set. She gave a single, sharp nod. Che straightened in his chair. He did not raise his voice. He spoke clearly into the silence of the bridge, for his crew and for the Empire listening in. All hands, brace for possible impact. Helm, hold our position. Do not yield an inch. He switched back to the open channel, his voice carrying a finality that seemed to chill the air on the bridge. Imperious and all Imperial vessels. Terran command bars the Galactic Empire from crossing this border. You are not authorized to proceed. The consequences of further advance will be yours alone to bear. The Dauntless, a single defiant speck of blue light, held its ground as the red tide of the Empire's will flowed towards it. The silence that followed was deeper than the vacuum outside, filled only with the soft hum of the ship's systems and the frantic beating of hearts. The line had been drawn, and J. Kim, standing on that line, waited to see if the galaxy would burn. The distance between the Dauntless and the lead Imperial destroyer was shrinking on the tactical screen, a countdown to collision or catastrophe. Jay's hands were steady on his console, but his mind raced. 40 minutes. Command's estimate felt like a death sentence. The Imperial fleet was a wall of polished durasteel and focused malice, advancing at a steady, deliberate pace meant to crush hope as much as resistance. Shall the first raise shields, Lieutenant? Yuna asked, her voice a low murmur. The protocol was clear. Shields up could be seen as an act of aggression. but so could letting them get close enough to spit on the hull. Not yet, Jay said, his eyes locked on the viewer. The Imperius itself was now visible as more than a sensor icon, a monstrous wedge of black metal, its edges glowing with the faint blue light of its propulsion. Hold visual focus on the Imperius. I want them to see we're looking right at them. On the bridge of the Imperius, Admiral Gorvik watched the tiny Terran vessel with a mixture of amusement and contempt. His bridge was vast, ornate, a monument to Imperial power. "They are holding position, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "No shield activation. No weapon signatures. Bravery or foolishness." Gorvik mused, stroking the ceremonial medal on his chest. "It matters little. Order the Vanguard to increase speed. Swat this insect aside. The Terrans need to learn the price of obstructing the Empire's will." The order was transmitted. The lead destroyer and 2 frigates surged forward, breaking formation. Their weapons ports began to glow with a malevolent green light as they charged their primary cannons back on the Dauntless. Alarms chimed softly. "They're powering weapons. Targeting scanners are painting us." Yuna's report was sharp. Jay's mouth was dry. "Helm, prepare for evasive pattern theta on my mark. Do not break position forward. Lateral movement only." He opened the ship-wide channel. "All hands, brace for impact. This is not a drill." He looked at the main screen, at the approaching symbols of destruction. This was it. They were going to die on this line for a principle. Just as the Imperial ships entered extreme weapons range, space itself seemed to ripple behind the DAUNTLESS. It was not one ripple, but dozens. First, great hexagonal plates of space shimmered like heat haze off asphalt, then dissolved to reveal massive orbital defense platforms. They were ugly, functional things, all thick armor and protruding gun barrels, now humming to life with a deep, sub-audible thrum that vibrated through the Dauntless's hull. They formed a staggered wall directly behind Jay's ship, blocking the path to the colonies. Before the Imperial fleet could react. Space rippled again in a different way, a sharper, brighter tier of blue-white light. Ships translated into real space. Not a vast armada, but a squadron. A dozen Terran cruisers, sleek and painted gunmetal gray, emerged from their faster-than-light jumps. They were not the largest ships in space, but they moved with a terrifying, silent unity. They took up positions around and above the Dauntless, forming a tight, interlocking defensive matrix. Their shields snapped into existence with a coordinated flash, creating a layered barrier of shimmering energy. The lead Imperial destroyer, committed to its attack run, fired. A lance of green plasma streaked towards the Dauntless. It never struck. A shield from the nearest Terran cruiser, the Resolute, flared a brilliant gold where it intercepted the bolt, dissipating the energy harmlessly. The Terran ships did not return fire. They simply held their formation, a silent, immovable wall. On the Imperius, the mood shattered. "Admiral." Multiple new contacts. Defensive platforms and a full Terran rapid response squadron. They were cloaked and waiting. Gorvik surged to his feet, his face a mask of fury. "Impossible. Their sensor technology is primitive. They couldn't hide this." But the evidence was on his own viewer. The Terrans had not run. They had not begged. They had laid a trap of pure, defiant deterrence. His vanguard was now outnumbered and outgunned, their momentum broken. A single frantic order went out to his lead ships. "Halt! All forward units, halt can hold fire." The Imperial advance stuttered to a stop. The great fleet now faced not a single patrol boat, but a prepared and formidable line of battle. A new hail flashed on Jay's console, this one with command's highest encryption. He accepted it. The face that appeared was Commander Min Choi, Her hair was cut short and practical, and her eyes held the calm of deep space. Lieutenant Kim, well held. Command is transferring tactical coordination to the Resolute. Maintain your position. You are the anchor point. Understood, Commander, Jay said, a wave of relief so profound it felt like weakness washing through him. He hadn't been abandoned. On the main viewer, a secondary window opened. It showed Commander Min, seated on the bridge of the Resolute. She was not looking at Jay, but directly ahead, as if she could see the Imperius itself. Open a channel to the Imperial flagship, she instructed her comms officer. Her voice was clear, cool, and carried absolute authority. Use their primary command frequency. A moment later, she began to speak. There was no bluster, no threat in her tone. It was a statement of fact, delivered like a judge passing sentence. Admiral of the Imperial Fleet, this is Commander Min Choi of the Terran starship Resolute. You have willfully violated the Treaty of Sirius by crossing into Terran space. Your aggressive posturing is noted. You will now power down your weapons and withdraw all vessels back across the Cygnus demilitarized zone. You have 10 minutes to comply. On the Imperius, Gorvik snarled. Who does she think she is? She commands a squadron. I command a fleet. Open a channel. When the connection was made, Gorvik's image, proud and angry, appeared on Min's screen. Commander Choi, you are in our way. Your little display is impressive, but it changes nothing. This sector has been claimed by the Galactic Empire for resource extraction. Stand aside, or we will dismantle your pretty wall, ship by ship. Min did not blink. The sector is under Terran protection, Admiral. Your claim is invalid. Your violation is recorded. This is not a negotiation. It is a directive. You will withdraw. The Empire does not take directives from children. Gorvik spat. Then the Empire will learn, Min said, her voice dropping a degree colder. You have 8 minutes, Admiral. The border you crossed is not a suggestion. Terran command bars the Galactic Empire from crossing it. The choice to start a war today is yours. Make your decision. She cut the transmission without waiting for a reply. On the Dauntless, the crew watched, holding their breath. The two fleets hung in the silent void, separated by a few hundred kilometers and an unbreakable line of will. The Terrans did not inch forward. They did not power more weapons. They simply waited, a unified, silent wall. The Imperial fleet, for the first time in its long, conquering memory, had been told no by someone who had the strength to mean it. The clock was ticking. The silence on the bridge of the Dauntless was a physical thing. It pressed in on Jay's ears, broken only by the low hum of life support and the soft beeps from the sensor console. On the main viewer, the two fleets faced each other in a frozen tableau. The Imperial ships, red icons on the screen, were a clenched fist. The Terran formation was a shield, and the clock was ticking down. Ensign Una Park watched the numbers change 7 minutes, then 6, but her mind wasn't on the timer. It was on the swirling blue and green jewel of a planet just behind the Terran line, visible on the long-range optical feed. It was Jiangsu 3, one of the colonies in the protected cluster. Her grandmother's stories, told in a voice soft with old pain, echoed in her head now, louder than any alarm. She glanced at Che, his profile stern and focused on the tactical readouts. The crew needed something. They needed to remember what they were holding this line for. It wasn't just a treaty. It was for people. Lieutenant, Una said, her voice cutting gently through the quiet. Permission to share a relevant historical log with the bridge crew? Audio only. It provides context. Jay looked at her, saw the unspoken plea in her eyes. He gave a short nod. Do it. Channel it ship-wide. Let everyone hear. Una's fingers moved over her panel, calling up a personal file, not a military one. It was digitized, cleaned of static, but the voice that filled the bridge was thin with age and memory. The sky was the wrong color the day they came. Una. It was a bright, happy blue. Then it turned dark with their ships. They called it an annexation, a polite word for a robbery. The voice belonged to Hana, Una's grandmother. As she spoke, the starfield on the view screen seemed to blur for Una, replaced by the images she'd built in her mind from a lifetime of telling. 50 standard years ago. The planet Jiangsu, not just the colony, but the lush homeworld itself, had been independent, Terran-aligned, thriving. The Galactic Empire, expanding along this spiral arm, had desired its fertile continents and rich orbital mineral belts. They issued a decree, become a protectorate. The Jiangsu Council refused. The Empire's response was not a war fleet at first. It was a peacekeeping force. They landed in the capital Sioan under banners of unity. Hana's voice grew harder. They walked into our council chambers and sat in our leaders' chairs. They said their laws were our laws now. They said their language was primary. Our history, they said, was a local curiosity. When people protested, they disappeared. On the bridge, a young systems officer, whose name was Bin, clenched his jaw. He was from a mining colony. He understood. The log continued. We were not soldiers. We were teachers, engineers, farmers. But we learned. I learned to carry data chips in my lunch pail, to hide refugees in cargo containers. We had a network, a fragile, stupid little network trying to get people out to Terran space. Una remembered sitting at her grandmother's knee, seeing the faraway look in her eyes. Hana had been a data archivist. Her weapon had been information. Her battlefield had been the city's underground dignet. The worst day, Hana's voice wavered, was when they closed the spaceport. They knew we were moving people. They sealed the planet. No one in or out without Imperial permission. That's when we knew they weren't just occupiers. They were jailers. They wanted the world, but they did not want us. Not as we were. A quiet anger was settling over the Dauntless's bridge now, warm and solid, displacing the cold fear. This was no longer an abstract standoff over a spatial border. This was about a grandmother hiding people from soldiers. This was about a planet's voice being silenced. Our last effort. We had a group of families, children, hiding in the old fusion plant sublevels. We had a window, a tiny 5-minute gap in their patrol schedule to get them to a smuggler's ship. I was the guide. A long pause, filled with the remembered smell of damp concrete and fear. We were almost there. Then the lights came on. Imperial troopers. They didn't ask questions. They just started pushing people back. A little boy, he was so scared. He ran. Una closed her eyes. She knew this part. She had dreamed it. They raised their rifles. I didn't think. I just stepped in front of the sights. I shouted for him to run. The last thing I heard was the child's feet on the grating and the sound of the stun bolt. It feels like ice, you know, spreading through your chest. Hana had survived the stun bolt. The boy had made it to the ship, but the Imperial troopers, furious, had taken her to a detention center. She was interrogated for weeks. She gave them nothing but a false name. By the time a distracted Terran diplomatic corps finally secured her release in a prisoner exchange, a year had passed. The annexation was complete. Jiangsu was an imperial world. Its culture was being systematically dismantled. Her network was shattered. Her home was gone. I came to Terran space with nothing, Hana's voice concluded, soft and final. I had only the clothes I wore and the memory of our sky before it turned dark. The Terrans, they gave me a new home. But they also made a promise. To me, and to all of us who lost our worlds. They said, never again. They drew a line, and they swore they would hold it. The log ended. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was charged. It was purposeful. J broke it, his voice rough. That line, he said, not turning from the viewer, is the one we're on right now. The planet behind us, Zhengsu 3, is full of people whose grandparents came from that Zhengsu. They are here because people like Hana bought their escape with stun bolts and prison time. The Empire isn't just crossing a spatial boundary today. They are trying to cross a line drawn in the blood and memory of millions. We are not just a military formation. We are a monument to that promise. Never again. He finally looked around at his crew. He saw Bin, sitting straighter. He saw Yuna, her eyes glistening, but her chin held high. He saw the resolve hardening on every face. On the tactical screen, the timer reached 3 minutes. The Imperial fleet had not moved. They had not powered down. They were still a clenched fist. But the crew of the Dauntless no longer saw an unstoppable force. They saw the same bullies who had taken Hana's sky, and they were standing on the line that had been sworn to stop them. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, clear certainty. They would hold. They would be the wall their grandmothers had prayed for. The border was not just in space. It was in them, and they would not let it fall. Admiral Gorvik stared at the tactical display, his face a stone mask hiding a storm of fury and calculation. The Terran line was a provocation. To retreat would be a humiliation whispered in every Imperial court. Yet, to attack this prepared defense was a tactical risk his political enemies would feast upon. He needed a different weapon. He needed to undermine their will, to find a crack in that unified wall. Summon the ambassador, he growled to an aide, and have the Whisper-class vessels move to flanking positions. Use the nebula's ionic interference. Do not engage. Just get into position. On the bridge of the Resolute, Commander Min Choi watched the clock hit 0. The Imperial fleet had not withdrawn. They had not advanced. They were stalled, thinking. It was a small victory, but a fragile one. A stalemate could still tip into war. Incoming transmission from the Imperius, her communications officer announced. They are sending a diplomatic shuttle. One life sign. They request a parley. Min's eyes narrowed. A talker. This was expected. Grant them approach Vector Alpha. Have a security team meet them in Shuttle Bay 3. I will meet them there. Keep all weapons targeted on their main fleet. The moment their stealth ships move, I want to know. The Imperial shuttle was a sleek, elegant craft, a stark contrast to the utilitarian Terran designs. It slipped into the Resolute's bay with a whisper. The figure that emerged was not in military uniform, but in the refined gray robes of the Imperial Diplomatic Corps. He was a Terran man, perhaps in his 50s, with hair just starting to gray at the temples. His name was Lee. He wore a small, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Commander Choi, Lee said, his voice smooth, speaking perfect, unaccented standard Terran. A privilege. I come hoping we can resolve this. Misunderstanding before good people on both sides are harmed. Ambassador Lei, Min replied, not offering her hand. She led him to a nearby briefing room, sparse and functional. The misunderstanding is that your fleet crossed a sovereign border. The resolution is simple. They leave. Lee's smile remained, taking a seat without invitation. Sovereign? A debatable term for space so recently claimed. The Empire brings stability, commander, prosperity. The resources in this sector could fuel growth for 100 struggling Terran colonies. Under our management, this entire region would thrive. Why let stubborn pride deny your people such benefits? We do not consider freedom and self-determination to be stubborn pride. Min said, sitting across from him. And the people in the Jiangsu cluster are not struggling. They are living. They wish to continue doing so without imperial management. We have seen what that looks like. Li sighed, a theatrical sound of disappointment. You refer to historical events. The integration of Jiangsu was messy. Growth often is. But look at the world now. It is a productive, orderly part of the imperial economic engine. Productive for whom? Min asked, her voice dangerously quiet. The cultural surveys we've intercepted show the systematic suppression of the Jiangsu language and history. The population reports show forced labor drafts for your orbital strip mines. You didn't integrate a world, Ambassador. You consumed it. And you are here to do the same to the colonies behind us. Li's smile finally faded. You speak of intercepted data, a violation of diplomatic protocols. I speak of observed truth, Min countered. We know your fleet's orders are not just to secure the sector. They are to forcibly relocate the colonial populations to make room for corporate extraction operations. You are not bringing civilization. You are bringing a vacuum to suck this place dry. While they spoke, on the edge of the sensor range, 2 Imperial Whisper-class corvettes, their hulls coated in sensor-absorbent material, slid through the chaotic energy soup of a nearby nebula. Their goal was to slip around the flanks of the Terran formation, to get behind their line, to prove it could be breached. They moved with predatory patience. Back in the briefing room, Li spread his hands. Even if there were such plans, is it worth a war, Commander? Look at the might arrayed against you. You may bleed us, but we will break you. Stand aside. Let logic prevail over sentiment. Before Min could answer, a soft chime sounded in the room. A priority alert from the bridge. She tapped a control on the table, and the voice of her tactical officer came through. Commander, we have a sensor ghost in Sector 7-8, inside the nebula. Confirming now. It's not a ghost. 2 Imperial stealth vessels moving to flank. Min's gaze locked onto Li. His expression of polite concern didn't change. But she saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Satisfaction. So, Min said, her voice now as cold as space. A parley and a dagger in the back. The Imperial playbook hasn't changed. This is a military maneuver, unrelated to our diplomatic discussion, Li said smoothly. Min stood up. The discussion is over. You will return to your shuttle. And you will watch what happens when you try to cross our border by deceit. She turned and strode onto the bridge, leaving Li under the watchful eyes of 2 security officers. On the main viewer, the tactical plot showed the 2 faint, flickering icons of the stealth ships, creeping around the edge of the Terran formation. Targets are approaching the secondary defense perimeter, the tactical officer reported. They will be in position to strike at our logistics line or make a run for the colony in 3 minutes. Are their weapons hot? Min asked. No, Commander. Holding passive. They're still trying to sneak. Min looked at the plot. She could order the nearest cruiser, the Valiant, to move to intercept. It would start a shooting match. It would give Gorvik his excuse. There was another way. Patch me through to the Dauntless, she ordered. On the patrol cruiser, Jay answered instantly. Dauntless, go ahead, Commander. Lieutenant Kim, you have the steadiest hand in the fleet. I have a firing solution for you. A single, low-yield proximity burst from your forward pulse cannon. Target is the lead stealth ship's primary engine housing. The shot must be precise. You must disable, not destroy. You must show them we see them, and that we choose not to kill them. Can you do it? Jay didn't hesitate. He looked at Yuna, who was already feeding the targeting data to his console. The Dauntless was small, its weapons light, but they were accurate. We can do it, Commander. Then take the shot. On the bridge of the Dauntless, all noise ceased. Jay's world narrowed to the crosshairs on his screen and the faint, wavering signal of the Imperial stealth corvette. He adjusted for nebula refraction, for target speed. He exhaled slowly, firing. The Dauntless shuddered slightly as a single bolt of focused energy lanced out into the void. It was not a blinding spear of light, but a precise, almost surgical tool. On the Imperial stealth ship, the first warning was a catastrophic system failure. The bolt did not pierce their hull. It precisely overloaded the magnetic containment of their port-side thruster array. With a flash of short-circuited power, the corvette tumbled out of control, its stealth field failing completely. It was left drifting, harmless, and exposed. Its companion ship immediately went dead in space. Powering down everything in a panic dot on the Imperius, Gorvik stared in disbelief. They had seen the shot. They had tracked it from the little patrol boat. It wasn't an act of war. It was a demonstration. A contemptuous, flawless demonstration of superior awareness and restraint. On the Resolute, Min opened a channel back to the briefing room, where Lee was watching the main feed. His face was pale. "Your dagger is broken, Ambassador," Min said, her image appearing on the screen before him. "Your treachery is recorded. Your fleet's intentions are laid bare for the galaxy to see. You have one final chance to leave with what little dignity you have left. The next shot will not be so gentle. The border holds." She cut the transmission. The silence on her bridge was one of grim triumph. They had not fired in anger. They had not escalated. They had simply and definitively barred the way. The Empire had gambled with lies and stealth, and they had lost. The only move left was the one they did not want to make, a direct, honest attack against an immovable defense. A cold, silent fury settled over the bridge of the Imperius. Admiral Gorvik stared at the tactical display, where the icon of his disabled stealth corvette blinked, a pathetic, drifting sign of failure. The Terran patrol boat. The little one. It had humiliated him. Commander Choi's icy rebuke still echoed in his mind, amplified by the surely smug silence of the entire Terran line. On his command channel, he could hear the frantic, hushed reports from his other stealth ship, its captain terrified of being the next target. The ambassador's shuttle was returning, carrying Lee's failure back with it. His political officers, the men who watched for weakness to report back to the Imperial Court, were staring at him. He saw it in their eyes, the calculation of his downfall. To return now, after a direct order to claim the sector, after being stopped by a force a fraction of his size. It was unthinkable. His career would be ash. His family's name would be a joke. All vessels. Gorvik's voice was a low growl that silenced the bridge. This is the Admiral. The Terrans have shown their true colors. They attack under flags of truce. They cripple our ships to provoke us. Their defiance cannot stand. The honor of the Empire is at stake. He took a deep, ragged breath, the weight of his pride crushing his better judgment. Battle Group Krath, form on me. Target the Terran command ship, the Resolute. We will punch through their center, break their will, and claim what is ours. All weapons, full power. Prepare for immediate attack. On the Resolute, the change in the Imperial formation was instantaneous and alarming. A third of the massive fleet, the most powerful battlecruisers and their escorts, detached from the main body. Their engine signatures flared to maximum burn. Their weapon ports glowed with a deadly, unified green light. They were forming into a spearhead, aimed directly at Min Choi's ship. "Commander," the tactical officer called out, voice tense. "Imperial Battle Group Krath is accelerating. Attack vector is U.S. They are committing." Min felt a chill, but it was not fear. It was the cold clarity of a confirmed truth. The Empire would rather burn than bend. She had hoped the display of restraint would make them see reason. It had only made them more desperate. All Terran units. This is Choi, she said, her voice calm and carrying across the fleet-wide channel. Hold formation. Reinforce forward shields. Do not return fire. I repeat, do not return fire unless they breach our hull integrity. Let them waste their anger on our will. On the Dauntless, Jay heard the order. His hands tightened on the edges of his console. You heard the commander. Helm, hold us steady. Tactical, divert all power from weapons to forward shields and structural integrity. Link our barrier with the Resolute's port matrix. Around him, the crew moved with a focused silence. They were no longer just holding a line. They were about to become a target. The Imperial spearhead came on, a wave of focused destruction. It was a terrifying sight, even on the sensors. Incoming fire in 5 seconds, Una reported, her voice flat. The first volley was a storm. Lances of green plasma, salvos of magnetized projectiles, and crackling beams of particle energy lit up the void. It all converged on the Terran line, with the Resolute and the ships immediately around it, including the Dauntless taking the brunt. The sound was not of explosions, but of a deep, groaning thunder that vibrated through the decks. The Terran energy shields flared a blinding, sun-bright gold where the impacts hit. The shields rippled, strained, and shimmered, but they held. The Dauntless shuddered violently, alarms screaming as systems were stressed to their limits. A console on the port side exploded in sparks, and a crewman was pulled away by a medic. Forward shields at 62%. Una called out over the din. Hull is holding. Hold position. Jay shouted back. The Imperial fleet continued to fire, a relentless, deafening barrage. On the Imperius, Orvik watched, his teeth bared. Again, pour it on. Their shields cannot last. But they did. The Terran ships did not budge. They did not fire a single shot in return. They simply endured. Their formation did not break. Their line did not waver. They were like a cliff face against a hurricane sea, being pounded but not eroding. Minutes passed. The Imperial weapons began to overheat. The ferocity of the assault started to wane, not by choice, but by the physical limits of their systems. And still, the golden wall of Terran shields held, dimmer now, but unbroken. On the Resolute, Min watched the power drain reports. It was severe, but they had prepared for a siege, not a duel. Rotate shield frequency. Bring secondary generators online. Maintain the wall. The most terrifying thing for the Imperial gunners was the silence. There was no return fire. No screams of defiance on the comms. No panic. Just a vast, unyielding, and silent absorption of their entire will to destroy. Admiral Gorvik felt the first true worm of doubt in his gut. He had thrown the might of his best ships at them. He had given the order to kill, and the Terrans had not even acknowledged the attack with retaliation. They had simply refused to be moved. They had refused to be provoked. They had refused to play the game of war by his rules. His tactical officer turned to him, face pale. Admiral, our primary weapon banks are at critical heat levels. We must cease fire or risk cascade failures. The Terran shield matrix is still operational. Their formation is completely intact. Gorvik looked at the viewer. The Terran line was still there. The Resolute was still there. The little patrol boat was still there. They had taken everything he had, and they had not flinched. In that moment, he didn't see weakness. He saw a strength so profound it was alien to him. A strength born not from the desire to conquer, but from the will to protect. A strength that could stand and take a beating indefinitely, just to prove a point. His pride shattered. not with a bang, but with a quiet, crushing realization of utter futility. You could not break someone who would not break. You could not defeat an enemy who refused to become a mirror of your own rage. His shoulders slumped. The fire left his eyes. In a voice that was suddenly old and tired, he gave the order he never imagined he would give. All ships, cease fire. Power down offensive systems. He could not bring himself to give the next order, so his second-in-command, seeing his defeat, did it for him. All Imperial vessels, the voice went out across the fleet. Disengage. Set course for withdrawal beyond the Cygnus DMZ, immediate compliance. The storm of fire ceased. The silence that followed was absolute and vast. On the Dauntless, Jay slowly unclenched his hands. The shuddering stopped. The only sound was the frantic beeping of damaged control boards and the heavy breathing of his crew. On his screen, the red icons of the Imperial fleet were turning, moving slowly, dejectedly, back the way they had come. A quiet cheer started somewhere on the bridge, but Jay held up a hand. It didn't feel like a moment for cheering. It felt like a moment for breath. On the Resolute, Min Choi watched the retreat. She keyed a final open-channel transmission, her voice carrying across the silent gulf. Imperial Fleet, you are now leaving Terran space. Do not return. The border is closed. No reply came. None was needed. Jay looked at Yuna. She was smiling, a real one this time, tears cutting clean lines through the smudge on her cheek. He gave her a small, tired nod. They had held the line, not with superior fire, but with superior will. They had barred the galaxy, not by being the biggest, but by being the most steadfast. And as the last Imperial ship crossed back over the golden line on the tactical screen and jumped away, the stars behind them seemed to shine just a little brighter and a little safer.